Searchers are bringing in extra equipment in an attempt to find 4 people missing in the province's flood emergency.
Ground is soft in areas, a lot of onshore roads, onshore footing on some of the areas. So we're taking safety as a number one concern at the moment, but doing as much as we possibly can.
RCMP say the search is focused around West Hants, northwest of Halifax. 2 of the missing are children who were in a pickup truck caught in the flooding. Divers found that vehicle under 2 meters of water. It was empty. An adult and a young person are also missing from another vehicle that was swept away. Police will be using industrial pumps to lower water levels in the search area. Floodwaters are now receding, revealing the extensive damage from the latest climate disaster to hit the province.
It's practically biblical. You know, we're just waiting for the locusts now, right?
Serious flooding in Cape Breton. Hurricane Fiona, massive devastation across many parts of this province, northern Nova Scotia. Fires, devastating fires. We're still trying to get through and to respond to Hurricane Fiona and clean up. We're still trying to, let the fire situation is still, look at the impact on people's lives.
Nova Scotia's premier says 6 bridges were destroyed by the flooding. Another 19 are damaged. There's also extensive damage to roads, more than 50 washed out in the disaster zone. And that's left communities and hundreds of people isolated. Hundreds of others are out of their homes.
It was just like somebody opened up the skies. Water was coming in, you couldn't come out here, it would just wash you right down the street. It was that bad.
There's also extensive damage to roads, more than 50 washed out in the disaster zone. Flash flooding was triggered by torrential rainfall Friday night and into Saturday. As much as 250 millimeters of rain fell in the flood zone. And Brett Ruskin leads off for us on this story. And Brett, we appreciate you being on the ground. We showed some of the extensive damage, but you're there witnessing all of this. So take us through some of the worst hit areas.
Yeah, Chris, driving around, seeing some of the spots. I'm about 20 minutes down the road from where I was last time. We'll talk about that train bridge in just a moment, but take a look behind me. This is an area that was closed down as of up until yesterday. You can still see the Shubenacadie River flowing across this roadway here. And a lot of the trees are down. There's kind of resting water in the woods there. It smells like fresh mud and wet grass right now because this part was underwater. This part was completely closed down. One of the many areas dealing with this just extensive downfall, this downpour that we saw Friday into Saturday. Now, I mentioned that train bridge area, that train railway that I was located at last hour. That is an area just outside of Truro, and that's a spot where it's kind of the one of the key links for goods and for people to get to and from Nova Scotia. Culverts were overwhelmed and the water and rain began eating away at the mud mound, a dirt mound supporting those rails. Now the rails are just suspended over thin air, basically. So CN Rail workers are on scene there trying to get that link back reestablished because that is the one rail line, the main line that people would use to go to and from on Via Rail on those passenger trains, but also cargo trains as well. So European cars coming from Europe get offloaded in Halifax onto trains and then sent across that rail link to Toronto, to Montreal, to Calgary. If you're ordering a Volkswagen, a BMW, a Porsche, they all go across that rail link. If you're ordering televisions, they go across that rail link. 60% of the cargo offloaded into the Port of Halifax use that link. So it is critical, a critical piece of infrastructure, one of the lasting pieces damaged by this floodwaters. Even though the floods have receded in places like this, the damage still remains in places like that. Chris.
And Brett, especially for our viewers who are in the flood zones, for those with families in the flood zones, I know they're watching, just wondering, what do we need to know today and in the days ahead?
Sure. Well, what do we need to know? Power outages in some areas still, not as extensive as they were, but still a few folks without electricity. We are seeing Canada Post that issued a notification, an alert saying it was a red service alert saying essentially no pickups, no deliveries throughout Nova Scotia until further notice for the safety of its letter carriers and its staff. We are seeing places that are still evacuated in some spots, about 200 homes or so, but many people have been able to return to their homes. And there's at least one pumping station in the Halifax area, actually in the Hammonds Plains area, where one of the areas affected by the fires a couple of months ago, they are being asked to conserve water, not flush their toilets as much because one of the pumping stations is down because it was flooded. So even though the waters again have receded, there is still lots of impact still to daily life here on the East Coast. Chris.
Brett, really appreciate your reporting from the ground on this. Brett Ruskin near Truro, Nova Scotia.